First of all, thanks very much to the Hungarian Embassy, to In Shifra's Arms, and especially to guests, family, and friends for paying tribute to Amy this evening. It means a great deal to me and to my family. Many people have, in eulogies and in public tributes, spoken beautifully about Amy as a teacher and scholar, colleague and friend, sister, mother, and grandmother. My own tribute appears as the foreword to the booklet before you. But since we are celebrating also the life-affirming work of In Shifra's Arms, I want to speak about Amy as woman and mother. For Amy was a woman most unusual, yet at the same time also exemplary. Amy was from the start destined to be a different woman. A tomboy growing up in the Bronx, playing stickball and stoopball with the boys, Amy never became girly in dress, taste, or manner. She never wore makeup, perhaps because her mother taught her that lipstick was made from the intestines of flies, but mainly because, being beautiful, but not overmuch, she had no need for artifice. Amy hated shopping for herself, had no taste for gossip, and was last in line when vanity and self-indulgence were handed out. At the High School of Music and Art, she played bassoon, not flute, and made speeches about the importance of civic education. Although impertinently frank and playfully mischievous, she did not flirt or use feminine wiles. She reported with amusement her mother's advice, always keep them guessing, but she was too forthright to know how. When I was interning in Boston, the doting wives of my colleagues were thick as thieves, proudly discussing their medical husbands, their new homes, and their babies. Amy was off studying the history of ideas at Brandeis, soon after teaching history at Lincoln Sudbury High School until becoming pregnant with Sarah. Until the week before she delivered, Amy was auditing Bernard Bailyn's class at Harvard on the American Revolution. Women come in many varieties, but our culture is impoverished in classifying them. The ancient Greeks did better. One type is Aphrodite, whose heartless beauty gives birth to erotic desire, unrequited, but to no living children. The opposite type is Artemis, the virginal denizen of pristine nature, friend of the unspoiled meadow and its hoofed creatures. Then there is henpecking Hera, jealously fighting for her interests against her husband. None of these did Amy know, even slightly. The only femininity resembling Amy's is bright-eyed Athena. Smart, tough-minded, practical, prudent, and concretely down to earth. Not given to abstract rationality, she understands exactly what is needed here and now, and she makes it happen. But Athena was hard and warlike and wore a bronze helmet. Amy was gentle and graceful and wore her long hair piled up and held with a leather clasp. Athena never married and had no children. Amy was married before she could vote and gave birth to 2 daughters, each of whom has 2 daughters of her own. If we're to understand Amy as woman, we need help from another tradition, our own. By a prophetic act of name magic that she delighted to find in books, Amy's Hebrew name was Chava, Eve, the name Adam gives to his woman after learning the sad news of the human condition, toil, loss, and separation, gained with the forbidden knowledge of good and bad. Latching onto the one hopeful note in the new dispensation, that she will bear children, quote, the man called his wife Chava, because she was the mother of all living, Chai. Woman, not man, carries the antidote for our mortality in her very being. Woman, tacitly accepting her own finitude, becomes the eternal source of human renewal. This truth Amy knew in her bones, and she embraced it fully. As teacher and learner, Amy lived ardently the life of the mind. But as woman and mother, there was not a grain of theory involved. She knew without thinking or reading guidebooks what it meant to be Chava, and to the prospect and practice of motherhood, she was receptivity itself. She relished the role nature had given her, not for self-fulfillment, but for the sake of those who would replace her. She never once complained of burdens or difficulties balancing. So well did she balance that Miriam, as late as 5th grade, told her teacher that her mother did not work. Taking life as it came, Amy suffered and rejoiced wholeheartedly with the changing fortunes of her children, again without regret, though she is rumored to have remarked wistfully in her later years, "Parenting is a life sentence." Unlike many of her peers, Amy looked upon children and motherhood through the forgotten parable of the embryo. Conceived in the oviduct, this nascent human being arrives unnoticed 5 days later to take up residence in the welcoming lining of Chava's womb, where she will nourish it out of her own substance for the next 9 months. The embryo gets this home not by its choice or hers, but because it needs one, and because miraculously her being graciously provides it. Read parabolically, this natural fact proclaims the true story of mother and child. The child is not the product of her will, but a gift of nature. And Chava cares for it, not in order to fulfill her desires, but because it needs and merits care. Each child, as she knows best, is a mysterious stranger who is given to her, and through her also to her husband, to know, to love, and to nurture, in part to pay back for the hospitality each Chava once received from her own mother. This is not philosophy or ideology, but the teaching of nature and the meaning of womanliness. Thus teaches the Jewish tradition, thus lived Amy. As Amy learned from experience and from books she loved to teach, motherhood is life-giving not only at birth. It is also the source of sacred memories, memories that sustain us against the howling winds. On this subject, here is Amy's own testimony taken from her comments on Shel Silverstein's The Giving Tree. You have the full text in the booklet. Like the ideal mother she is, the tree seems to understand the nature and limits of her own maternal powers. She knows she must accept the choices the boy makes, even when they seem unwise and misguided. Most especially, she knows, probably from the beginning, that the life she will nourish must cost her her own, and she anticipates necessity by giving her young child everything most needful, trusting that a happy and loving childhood will see him through the sorrows and pains of tomorrow. For she knows that happy memories can become holy. They can anchor and sustain one's life. With profound gratitude for having had so much of Amy in our lives, my family and I are anchored and sustained by the happy and sacred memories of our Athenian Chava.